So, how many of you became Christians as adults? Most of you. Okay, so in that, were you in that realm of, and some of us kind of grew up in that women's lib. I kind of came on the tail end of that big movement. But how many of you thought, forget it, I'm going to have a career, I'm going to work, I'm going to, you had that mindset, right? And so then coming to God's word and having to change everything that I believed. I think in my Christianity I went one way and then I came back to a balance. There's this really weird ringing. I'm booming. Do you hear it?
Yes.
It sounds like Camp Pendleton. Doesn't it? It's like this low rumble. If my son-in-law were here, he would be able to tell you exactly what that was. He'd be like, that's a 60 cycle hum. I feel like Larry's behind me playing the bass. So, yeah. She says there's this frequently asked question is kind of how she starts off chapter 8. Is it right for a Christian woman to work outside the home? Now, what do you guys think about that? Where do you fall on that subject?
Do I need to?
Vanna is coming.
Okay. I always stayed home with my kids up until recently because my husband was unemployed. We're still kind of in that phase where we're recovering. I personally, if I could have a choice myself, I would stay home. That's just my heart. I feel like the kids, they kind of need that. I'm more stressed out because I'm not home all the time. So things aren't getting done properly. However, I have heard of, I have seen a mom work outside of home and a father, but they had grandparents there who were also helping, and it was kind of like a whole family group effort, community of people. Yeah, it was kind of, so I've seen that too. Of course, their kids are still young, so I don't know what the end result will be, but
Okay.
I don't know. I personally, I would prefer to stay home. But
So your desire is to stay home. Where does
Yeah.
someone else fall on the issue? And then we'll go back to Sherry.
So completely, I think my heart was always to stay home with my children. But there came a point in time where, because of some circumstances, I went ahead and went back to work teaching. And so it was a situation where I took my children with me. They would come in at recess. We would go home. And it really necessitated me being a very organized person. So Monday would be, I'd come home, get them going on homework, and then I would then have, maybe Monday was my day to do all the dusting and clear the trashes or whatever. It needed that kind of thing. There needed to be time for prayer and all that. But it was a season where I was helping my husband financially because of some circumstances that came up. So.
Okay, so out of necessity.
Out of necessity.
I love how she brought up, what is your motivation for this, Sherry?
Pretty much echoing what Gina said. I've done it all.
Right.
I became a Christian at 31. I was pregnant, married. I've done all that. I was the feminist soldier. And yeah, I was a good
I am woman, hear me
soldier.
roar.
Yes, I am woman, hear me roar. I can bring home the bacon, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, yeah, I was really into that mindset, and we had just bought a home. And so I was, I was going to go back to what Gina said about, when I see younger women, the ideal to me, the absolute ideal is for the mom to be home. That's the ideal. Then there is the realities of life.
Right.
There's circumstances that come up, but always, again, it goes back to motive and conviction.
Right.
So I think that they have to look at those two things, in the whole big picture.
Right.
Because sometimes your circumstances, you look at them and go, like I did. I said, are you kidding me, Lord? There is no way that I can stay home. I was convicted,
Right.
but I couldn't just, do it. And it took 2 years for
Right.
my husband to get on board. But that's because I wasn't yielding to the Holy Spirit up to that point. So I was in a deep, deep hole
Right.
that I had to get out of. That took a long time.
Right.
But also, even given that, even when women have to go back to work, they still have their biblical wife role to fulfill.
Yes.
And so I think that, a lot of times that there's, let's say like Gina, she had to go back to work. You still have to counsel the woman that you still have those other responsibilities, and to help them to be able to incorporate those and balance those in their life, because you really don't feel good about yourself when you're slacking in that area. Even when you're climbing up the ladder and you're ambitious and you're making lots of money, when
Right,
you're
if
not
your home's in
fulfilling,
chaos.
yeah, if you're not fulfilling your biblical role and your home is in chaos, your kids are
Right.
wild, which I did that too. I've been in that stage too. Then everything is out of whack. So
Right.
it's all of those things put
Right.
together.
Some good encouragement, because one you hit on was that if you are in that trap of having to work, and I've counseled women, because we're talking also next week about mentoring other people. So yes, this is for us, but then how do we counsel other people? And one of the great things is, I worked with a girl that she was working full time and could see no way out. And I said, I know you can't see any way out. So instead of just surrendering to it, it's like, get a plan. Even if in 5 years you can get out, you're still working towards that plan. You're still going to be saying, okay, what decisions am I going to make today? Because I think people just give up. It's like, well, I just have to work because now we're used to 2 incomes. And especially girls that are getting married, making sure that they, like, encouraging them, like, learn to live on 1 income. If you can do anything, live on 1 income, because that's going to be a huge help. Have to work needs to be explored.
But also, I think what people don't realize is they think they can't live on 1 income because they've gotten used to that. There is a way to work to that, and sometimes God will do it in a overnight slam dunk if He really is going after you and you're not being obedient. Sometimes it's just a matter of the Lord restructuring your life. And I'll say as an example, my husband had a friend who had a company where his wife was very ill, and he was begging my husband to come over and help him with the company. So we prayed about it for literally over a year, and overnight our income cut in half. But when he took that job, you can do it if you have to. It's amazing what you can cut out that you don't know you can cut out.
Right.
Yes, I did have to work for a while as we balanced things out. I am currently working, but I have no kids at home. So there's just seasons that sometimes you do for certain reasons. But when my kids were little, I was home. If I needed income, I babysat or did things I could do from my home. There's ways to do that. You really just need to seek the Lord, and He does provide.
Right. Yeah. And that's good too. There's different seasons that we go in and out of. I remember doing childcare in my home. I remember when we first got married, I was working. I was working in a hospital. Ted was a paramedic, and I was leaving my kids home so much. But the Holy Spirit, even in that stage of life when I wasn't even really walking with the Lord, was still like, there was still that thing implanted in me that was like, oh, I want to be home. I didn't want somebody else raising my children, and that's another consideration is, who's going to be the majority of the influence on my child, and, who's going to be putting all of their thoughts and their worldviews and their biblical views on my children. But then you also have to take the other extreme of that, and we have to be very careful about being judgmental about people who do work, because we don't know their situation. I know people who are widowed, that if they don't work, their children don't eat. I know people who, out of submission, I've had people confide in me that I don't want to work, but my husband makes me. Well, that's a submission issue. So we might be barking on that lady, you shouldn't work, you shouldn't work. And she's just like, I'm just being obedient to my husband. God's going to honor that, right? Because she's being submissive. He might hold her husband accountable, but she's going to be blessed for her submission to her husband. But I loved how she just explored, like, what's your motivation? I think especially in America, we can get into this trap of like, well, we can't afford to live off of this income. It's like, really? Because, Starbucks is $5 and I see one in your hand a lot. $5 a cup. That's a lot of money. I added up over what I spent on Starbucks in a month. I mean, it's a lot of money. It's like, so I think there are ways for me. I got mono. When we planted revival in 92 of May, I got mono the first week. And I was sick for months, like probably, I was sick for about a year, but for like 6 weeks in bed, throwing up. I was jaundiced. It was horrible. I didn't even care. My friend and I got to the point where she came over one morning and the kids, it was literally like the fridge is over there. Well, I couldn't even lift my arm because if you've ever had mono, you're like, you know what it's like. And so she walked in one day and she goes, "You have a burrito on your floor." And I was like, yeah, like as I'm laying on the couch. So we called it the burrito on the floor day. So then from then on, it's like, are you having a burrito on the floor day? It's like, yes, I am. As a matter of fact, I am. And I could care less right now. But there are things that come into our life and that cut our income. And we went through some serious financial hardship. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. You know what I mean? That transition was very difficult. And my thing was, well, if he can bring in this much, and I was married to a fireman, so it was like, oh, one more shift a month and we can do this. Oh, one more shift a month and we can do this. And then you've got the man that's gone all the time. And then I'm working and passing my kids off at childcare. And especially today, I mean, I am harping on my children, do not leave your children in childcare because there's just so many, you have no idea what the personal life of that person is. They're not just going to come up and tell you, I'm abusing. I mean, you guys have seen the nanny cams, you know what I mean? Like it can be a dangerous situation, but we have to be careful again because there are people who they have to do that. And we want to come alongside. So I think if you're counseling someone or mentoring someone, exploring the options, exploring what's the motivation. She goes through that. Is your motivation to be rich? Is your motivation, for your self, your self-promotion? And she kind of like hammers through that. So first we have to define what's a worker at home. And Titus 2:5 describes it as to work or to be employed in a dwelling. Can I just tell you, I know several women who stay at home that are not workers of home. Just because you're a stay-at-home mom does not mean that you're actually working in your home. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I think we get this like feeling like we're okay because it's like, oh, I'm a stay-at-home mom. So that title then renders me okay with God when that's not true. Look at Proverbs 31. It's just like listed of things that we are to be doing in our homes. We're to be workers in our homes. The management of the home, the organization of the home, like that's all on us. And what you said about, I say 2 curses. When you work, you still have the curse of having to do the homework too as you're, it's childbearing, but as you know what I mean, your obligation to the home is organizing it and managing it. So if I work, that doesn't get me out of that job either. It's still my job. Now, and then that puts a burden on our husbands because now they come home and it's like, no, I've been working, like you have to help too. And so if you have kids, like that can become very, very chaotic. So taking on both those roles, it just stresses you out, like completely stresses you out. So she says we're supposed to be working in our homes. He says that we should be content to be at home and serve our families and make material sacrifices when necessary. That needs to be taught in the church so badly, because the world does such a great job at demeaning that role as a weaker role, as oh, you can't get a job, or oh, you can't have a career, oh, you're not intelligent enough to be in the workforce. And we think we're watching 2-year-old cartoons all day. It's like, can I have a decent conversation? I don't want to talk about a purple dinosaur again. Like, I'm singing his songs now in my car. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just get to the point where you're just like, where you feel like, there were days where it's like, I'm dumber now, for sure. Like, I'm dumber. Like, like, so you start going to parties and social events and you start talking like 2-year-old talk. Yeah. Like, I think it's funny when dads do it at the church. Occasionally you'll see him like talk about like Barbie, Fairytopia or something. Like, yes, you guys are in the same season of life. But it does kind of work on us mentally. I think the enemy uses it too, to just go, oh, you just stay at home. What good is that? So the biblical concept of worker at home, it's not popular, but it's what God intended for women, especially younger women, to stay at home and do a good job of caring for their homes and their families. A wife who has gone with too many activities or work does not have time or energy to keep her home as she should keep it. That hits everyone. Whether you work or you don't work, it's like, who am I in the home? And you guys all know that when your home's organized, when you have a plan, when you have your schedules, everything just goes better. I think she pointed out, and I don't know where it is, and it's somewhere in my notes, but like, your husband having like clean underwear in the drawer. Like, I think that's so, that's just like one little small point. And it's like, it seems so stupid, but then you think about it. I think about Ted on Sunday mornings. What if he's getting up and he had to rummage through dirty clothes to like find something to wear? Or, or my kids, like they're late for school because nobody knows we don't know where the shoes are, instead of tackling some of those problems and those issues, like, okay, we're having an issue with shoes every morning. I'm the organizer of the home. I'm the manager of the home. How can I troubleshoot that so that we don't have that? We're in the process of filming some home workshops, and Marla was doing one the other day, and she would talk about how she doesn't just lay her clothes out for her kids. She lays her own clothes out. I sometimes think about like, okay, what am I going to wear tomorrow? But isn't it true, on the days you do that, you're out? The days you don't do that, it's like I'm standing at my closet like, I have nothing to wear. I don't know what and then this shirt and that shirt and this shirt, and pretty soon you're just like, forget it, I'm not going. Right? I'm not going. I'm just going to sit on the couch and wallow in my unorganization. Have you ever been in a room where you just want to stare at the wall because you don't know where to start? You're just like, I have no idea where to start. Yeah. You just like, I'm just going to look at the corner because, yeah, I know.
Kids pick their own clothes. I mean, like, what age are you talking about? Like, I have a teenager. She's not going to let me pick out her clothes.
No, probably not. Yeah. Well, but you could tell your children at that age, like, hey, you're going to school tomorrow. I think what you're doing is you're mentoring her to become a woman. So you're trying to teach her, like, some of these things that those nuggets that she can take then into her adult life, and you give them the reasons why. It's not only just telling them the rules, but like, okay, the reason why we set out our clothes is because in the morning it's chaotic. And it's going to be your job to manage your home someday. How are you going to do that? I think personally in America, we grow our kids up way too late. We're the only culture that like coddles and babies our children till they're like 30. It's like, it's ridiculous. I mean, we really should be raising our children so that they can like be on their own at a fairly young age. I mean, other cultures, it's like 14, 15. They're working as adults and they're growing up. And, I think it's in our spoiled nation that we think, oh, we need to do their laundry. When I meet husbands who's like, their moms have done their laundries their whole life, like, it's just bad. I won't say anything else. I'm like Ted. See that filter engaging? Just gonna cause that filter to hone in there. So in contemplating these two things, and if you're contemplating it yourself or you're working with someone in a mentoring relationship, and it's really interesting because a lot of times we think like, oh, I'm mentoring somebody. What do I cover? Oh my goodness. There's so many things to cover. And there's so many things, we should start compiling a list of like just things to cover when you're in mentoring, because there's so much to talk about. You could just take each of these chapters and just go, okay, let's talk about work. Let's talk about your home. Let's talk about, submission, just all these things that they're going to have to contemplate. So she goes through the motives for working, loss of identity. I mean, that's a substantial issue, but then training her, how do I get my identity in raising my children the way that God intended us to raise them? Material things are extra money. That's a huge reason. I've heard so many women, oh, well, I work, but that's our vacation money. Or, oh, I work, so that's our clothes money. Do you know 2020 did an entire study on this? And it was, they took about 5 or 10 girls, can't remember, but I remember one. And these were women who made good incomes and had careers. They weren't just like working at Starbucks. These were like career women, lawyers, doctors, and the like. They took their income, they took all the expenses that it cost for them to work, all the childcare expenses, and this one girl, and she made a decent salary. I think it was over 100 and maybe closer to 200,000 a year. She made 20,000 a year. In most cases, it costs women to work. After you get the clothes and the lunches and the traveling and the gas, and you need the car and all the things and the childcare and all the extra food you had to take for them, they just took everything out, and it literally cost women to work. Women were in tears because here they were thinking they were getting ahead, and they actually were not. So she says, here's another horrible motivation. I mean, some moms, they just don't want to stay home with their kids. They don't want to be a mom. They don't, and maybe some of us have felt like that. I mean, there are days when it's like, I do not want to be your mother today. But isn't that true? Some, it's like, because it is more work. I remember literally going to work at the hospital and just going, it's so nice here. The people that are irritating me, I don't have to take home. And so you get in that mode where it's like, isn't it just easier? Kind of dump them off at somebody else's house? Like, it really is a lot easier for us to do that. But then I had another moment. I was standing in Riverside. I was working at Riverside Community Hospital. It was 3 a.m, and I walked out to the parking lot because you just take a break and you just need to get out of the ER. And I'm standing there and I'm looking around, and it just dawned on me, what am I doing here? Have you ever had that moment where you're just like, what am I doing here? What am I doing? And you take that inventory and you're like, this isn't even where I want to be. Sometimes we end up in life in places where we never even thought we would be, or we never thought we would go, or we never thought we would do. And you're like, I need to correct this. I need to work on this. So we talked about reasons. What would be some reasons why women would have to work outside the home? We talked about widow. What else? Loss of income. Maybe a divorce. Some people that, it wasn't their idea to get divorced, but they find themselves in a divorce. They can't help it. Their husband initiated it, and maybe it's like, okay, that child support isn't going to pay for our children, so I have to work. Health, could be health reasons, or maybe an insurance issue, where I do know wives that, I work for the insurance because my husband can't get it at his job. That's, a necessity for most. Maybe like you, Gina, she works while the kids are at school. We look at Proverbs 31. She was very industrious. She wasn't a woman who just sat around, but she made merchandise out of the things that she was naturally doing at home, or just the fruit of her labors were like things that we're already doing. So doing a business at home or working at the school or something like that. Let me see what else. Can you think of any others?
Maybe if they get themselves into debt and they only do it for a season to pay off
Okay.
the debt.
So maybe they've had some bad decisions, have been disobedient, or maybe they weren't saved and they got in all this debt, and then it's like, okay, we got to work ourselves out of it. That's the same kind of thing of working and saying, okay, I'm going to come home and it's going to take 5 years. Same debt might be the same thing where you sit down with your husband and, okay, we have a lot of debt and I can't do it now, but we're going to make decisions today that are going to get me home. Even though it's late, it's better late than never. Do you know what I mean? It's better that way. And then we have to decide on, just staying at home. Sorry, that's my phone. I don't know why. I never have it vibrate. And if it's my children, there's going to be 50 of those because they just start talking. And then, we're on a family group text. Not even their spouses. They don't want no part of that family group text. They're like, take me out of this conversation because we talk about nonsense. So there's very different scenarios on all sides, and I do think that we can get judgmental as Christians, like pointing the finger, but we just have to know what God has called us to do, and we have to be obedient to that, and we have to look to His Word at what is the truth. So we know the truth is that women are workers of home. We have to settle on that because that's His Word. How that's done and how we're obedient to Him in that is between us and Him, but the word is we're to be workers at home. And so she makes that very clear, and I thought she did a great job of kind of balancing that out. So obviously, if we're not managing our homes, it brings about what? Chaos, and it brings about contention. I know when my home is organized and clean and my husband comes in, it makes him relax. It makes him feel like, oh, there's not all these things. Now, he doesn't mind if I say, can you do this or can you do that or can you help me here? But if he comes in and it's chaos. Now, I'm not talking about when you have toddlers because toddlers is just a season of chaos. Yeah, you get a hall pass for toddlers. I remember several times when Ted came in at like 5 and I'm like still in my like nightgown. It's like, don't even ask. You know, those days you're like, do not even ask. Just smile like I look good. Like, yeah. And we'll all get along. But there's a difference between having a bad day and being completely out of control and chaotic. And so if you're mentoring other girls, maybe asking, what's going on in the home? Like, how is your organization? How are you doing with schedules? Are your kids, and you've seen the kids, like, it's just frantic and everybody's running and the kids are like, their hair is like, you know what I mean? Like, there's the difference between chaos, and you don't want your family to run in chaos. I mean, there are times when it's chaotic and fun, but John MacArthur says a wife is to focus her life on the home. God has designed the family to be her sphere of responsibility. I love that. That doesn't mean that she should spend 24 hours a day there. The Proverbs 31 woman did pour into her family. She woke up early and went to bed late for the sake of those in it. That is sacrificial. Like if there are times when you got to stay up late for the sake of your family, you're planning your next day. It is a full-time job. If we do this right, if we do this according to the way that the Bible describes it, I mean, you read through Proverbs 31 like she's a busy bee. Yeah. She's not sitting, like her Fitbit she doesn't have to do this. Her Fitbit, I was telling the girls at the retreat that you could do a trick with Fitbit. You could sit and have your coffee and just go like this, wrapping it around your finger. But her Fitbit would have been off the charts because she's constantly moving in her home. She doesn't have time to sit idly and watch, a bunch of different soap operas. Someone was talking about soap operas the other day. I went to a pastor's wives thing, and one of the ladies was talking about soap operas, and I'm like, soap operas, it's reality TV now. It's like, it's not... Nobody's really interested in soap operas too much, but boy, The Bachelorette, you know what I mean? There's like, yeah. You were gonna wait for the mic because I don't know who's in the. You're busy today.
I think one of the key sentences is on page 112 when she asks, really, if her motives are for the glory of God.
Right.
And I think that holds true for everything we've been talking about. And I know, like, I have to ask myself on a daily basis because I am a busy bee. You know, are my motives all about me or all about, maybe even blending into the cultural norms or whatever it is?
Right.
Or are my motives for working, staying home with the kids, whatever we find ourselves in? I think it's really healthy to always have a check. What are my motives? Are these really in line with the Word of God? And am I doing this for the glory of God or for myself or for others?
Right. Just checking our motives and why are we doing it? Why do we do? And that's good on every level. Why do we do what we're doing? She goes on to she gives 3 very practical advice for younger women working in the home. And she talks about exhorting them to work hard and to not be lazy. That's something that we could encourage those that are younger, to get them in that mindset because the world already has molded them into its mold. So the world and these younger girls, and I'd like to hear from you younger girls about what does the world say to you about being a younger woman? Would you mind sharing, maybe? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Here she comes.
Well, as a young woman, it's just hard in general because you're always pressured by the feminist movement.
I'm all still?
Yeah, still,
Gosh.
it's really big, and you hear like, especially nowadays when it's the biggest pressure is to not really have kids, or if you have kids, you put them in daycare or something like that. Still, also, and I was just talking to a girlfriend of mine the other day, and she's a new mom, and she's been struggling with that as well. And she was just saying, it's just a constant battle. It always will be, as a young woman, because it's part of the flesh too. We want to have what it says in Genesis that our desire will be for our husband.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that she's been really struggling with that. But I haven't really, growing up, I haven't had that battle as much. I don't have had that blessing to just kind of be at peace with it, as far as just knowing where my place is as a woman. But once I am married, I'm sure that will be a struggle.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you have such a great start because you're in the position where you're learning about these things before you go into marriage. So, are you married now?
I'm not.
No. So before you go into marriage, you have that idea then of okay, what are the things that I want to talk to my husband about and my future husband, and are the same things important to him that are important to me? I mean, you don't want to find out after you're married that oh, okay, now I married this guy who wants me, to be a career woman. And I think it's hard for us to say before we get married, oh, I just want to be a stay-at-home mom. And if you don't see the value in it, then it's hard to say, I just want to be a stay-at-home mom and I want to manage my house well. Now, if you learn the way that the Bible talks about it, then it sounds exciting. Because then it's oh, this passion, and God's given me this passion. And isn't there so much joy? Because God's made us for the role, isn't there so much joy when we accomplish it? When you accomplish something with your children, or you build a character issue? Yes.
I'm not a young girl, but I just wanted to ask that because I have a daughter who's feminist, but she's feminist, and she talks a lot about that. Can you guys hear me? No.
It's not for us, it's for the Mommy and Me class. They're in a different room, so they can't hear you. I know, there's this I don't know what it is.
Hello. Okay. And she.
Maybe this one's hot.
Yeah. I had to fight for my being valuable, and how valuable a mother is, and how valuable her work in the home is, and how tiring it is. Because if you work, you don't have time to be a mom. You don't have time to be patient, and because your energy is spent someplace else outside the home. And so
Right.
when you come back to the home, you don't want to cook, you don't want to listen to the kids, you don't want to do all that. But anyway, it's devaluing the woman in the home. She's
Right.
never given any respect or any sort of voice.
Right.
And like I tell her, I'm valuable. But without what I did, even for you guys, we wouldn't have, we have so much problems because of that. And so we go through the whole thing, and I talked to her, but she's like, yeah, like she thinks it's valuable to be a mom, but a lot of feminists don't. They think, you or like my husband, for instance, he thinks I should work and be a mom. So
Right.
that's really hard.
Right. Yeah, that's a difficult place to be, especially if you want to be at home and your husband wants you to work. Then it becomes this big battle of what do I do and how do I be obedient to God and to my husband, and some good points that you brought up, just that devaluing of that role, because when you work, you're getting evaluations. If you are good at your job, you're getting the accolades of people telling you how wonderful you are. No 2 or 3-year-old is telling you how wonderful you are. It's like, get me something else. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you just do my laundry because you're here. No one's thanking you for like the room service you're providing. You know what I mean? No one's leaving you a tip.
Other women can do it. How come they can work and be moms?
Right.
I'm just not that kind of, I can't.
Right. You can't do it well. You can't do, and they're not doing, they may look like they're doing it well, but I've seen very few women that can actually work and have a career and be a mom well. Yeah, well, you can't, it's hard to do both. You know what I mean? Like, I just think you can't mother in that way and really teach God's word. What does it say in Deuteronomy 6? While we're sitting, while we're standing, while we're saying, by the way, when we're sitting, all the time we're supposed to be teaching about Jesus. That's hard to do if you're gone 12 hours a day.
I was just going to say that at one point in my life, I was a full-time employee and a Mary Kay lady. And I read Mary Kay's autobiography, and there's a quote in there, I will never forget this. And she said to all the women out there, all the Mary Kay ladies, you can have it all, just not all at one time. And that always stuck with me.
That's fantastic. There'll be a season for that,
be a season.
but you have to recognize your seasons, because I think some people think, oh, well, my kids are little, this is going to be forever. I gave that advice to a pastor's wife last night. Your kids aren't always going to be there. It's a very short season, and I know you don't realize it when they're all under your roof, but it goes like that. Anybody who has an empty nest knows how quickly that season goes, and then they're off and running, and then you can do the things that you want to do, and you can start the things that you want to start. Or when they're in school. My daughter, she's getting a lot of work right now. She did a website for Share Young Word, and so now people are calling her and saying, can you do mine? Can you do mine? She's like, Mom, I'm ignoring my kids. We just had this conversation yesterday. And I said, well, maybe schedule your work for August or September when your kids go in school, and you just do as many as you can in that time that they're gone. And if you can't do it, you just say no. Like, there's a point where it's like, because I also think we can get sidetracked, like, oh, I'm ignoring him. Oh, I'm going to pay attention to him later. And then pretty soon that week becomes a month, and that month becomes a year. And then you go through a couple of years and you're like, I've totally blown it. I have missed an opportunity. And we can blow it when we're with them all the time even more, can't we?
I shared that I was teaching for a while, and all of my kids were in elementary, and it really did look like I was doing great. I mean, I was scheduled at home, there was still dinner, da-da-da, but I will never forget the day, because I was master teacher of my grades, so I got there before 7. Sometimes I left at 6 o'clock at night. My kids were doing work in the classroom, and I was finishing up. But I will never forget one night when we all got into the car. It was an exhausting day, and they were so excited to have their mommy, and they started chattering away, and my response to them was, could you please just be quiet? I just need 10 minutes of silence. And their little faces and their countenance and everything, and they went, okay. And I thought, Mom failed, this is not working.
Right.
So it was one of those moments where I needed to really take a look at things and do things differently. So we can look into somebody else's life and say, oh, but they're all handling it and it's all going great. And that may not really be the case. Never does. No.
I've said that to my kids when I've stayed home with them. Shut up. Go ahead, Mandy. Yeah, I know. Then you feel guilty.
I feel pressure even now. I work part-time as a RN just 2 days a week and for benefits. And even the women, young moms, 2 or 3 kids are going back to school right now to get their APN. I'm like, how are you doing this and taking care of your home? It's just like, they're like, you get comments like, you don't want to do this all your life, do you? I'm like, I don't care. It's not my life. It's just a job. I love what I do, but like, I'd rather be at home with my kids. That's my focus in life, not my job.
Yeah.
It's like there's so much pressure to be even more, not
Right.
just be an RN, but get
Right.
even more. It's just,
Right.
you know, one nurse, his husband's like a pediatrician, and she works full time. Like, why do you work? Why do you have to work full time? You know, it's just like that's their
She's
way
paying
of
off
life.
those student loans for her husband. That's what she's
But that's
doing.
just how they want to live. You know, they live in La Jolla, and they have to pay the bills to live there. You know, it's just
Yeah.
it's just sad, the mindset.
Yeah. And it's out there, and there is that pressure, but the thing is it comes down to belief. Because it depends on what you believe. If you don't believe that the role that God, that's why it goes back to this role and why we have to mentor young women to understand this role. Because if we don't understand why God has us do this, then it won't change what we're doing. Because in the world, well, it does make sense to go back to school. Why wouldn't you? You've already had this much education. Why not get more? And it doesn't mean that we can't go to school. I know that's not your point, but it's like it comes back to that belief. And that just gives you an opportunity of, well, what do they really believe? We have a situation in an extended family. Christian mom just had a baby, 6 weeks old. She's at daycare. Why? Because her career is so important to her. And her mindset is, why wouldn't I? Why would I settle for that? You know, I can be a mom and do this. And I think, and I've seen it, those are the ones that when their kids get older, there's huge regrets. Yes. There's just huge, because we've missed our role, you know, and it's hard. I remember thinking that myself when I had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I decided to go back to school, and it was, you know, microbiology was on the horizon. Why I picked microbiology to go back into, I'll never know, but it was the next thing I needed. And I went in, and like 2 weeks into it, I'm like, you know, I've got enough germs at home that I need to be taken care of. Like, I cannot be looking at them in a petri dish. And that's what I told my professor. I'm just like, I'm going to have to go take care of the germs at home, because I couldn't do both. It was like one was going to lose. And so I had to make that choice, but I don't think people see it.
So, I got to work, my last job, well, the one that I loved the most was I got to work with Franklin Graham's ministry, you know, Operation Christmas Child. And so I was always curious about their family, you know, because you think, well, I mean, we don't have a hierarchy, but you think, oh, I mean, they're probably at the top, you know, if there was. And so I got to see them and be around them, and because I was curious, you know, what are these people like? Thankfully, they were what you would hope they'd be. But they all said, their kids, you know, I got to meet him and Franklin and his sister, and they all said the real hero of our family was our mom.
Mm-hmm.
She stayed home, and she said she was going to influence the world. I think the main thing is she had an eternal perspective. She was going to influence the world through her children.
Yeah.
And she had a sign that said, "Divine service happens here 3 times a day at their
Right.
meals." And she, you know, was there at home when he was gone.
Alone, because he was
Yes,
gone
yeah.
a lot.
She did have her
Yeah.
family. They said that was a good thing. They picked that area where they lived because it was there were a lot of retired missionaries, and they helped, you know, and the
Right.
family to raise the kids. And we had this tape. I remember it. The interesting thing was with an interview of Larry King and Billy Graham, and I remember the last question he asked was, "Billy, any regrets?" And he said, oh, I wished I would have spent more time with my family. And then when she died, the family was even amazed. They said, my father had a ministry to many, thousands. My mother had an influence with one-on-one. There were so many people that came to her funeral who
Right.
she had invested in and made a difference in their life.
Right.
And I thought, she even, making a home, she went to the area, got the logs, had them cut down, dragged them to her house. I mean, this is a real homemaker,
Right.
But
Right.
that was a really good example of someone,
it's a good
now her kids are
example.
all in Christian ministry,
Right.
influencing the world. So that was a good
Yeah.
example.
That's a really good example. And the other thing that I think of is how much she released her husband to minister to others, because that can be another trap that we get into. Think about if she would have worked outside the home and had that responsibility. There's no way that man could have left to do ministry, because she wouldn't have had that organized and worked in the home so that he could be released for ministry.
So many women complain that their husbands are not leaders in the home anymore. Sorry. So many people complain that their husbands are not leaders in the home anymore, and a big part of that is because the women are not home. They
Oh, that's a
can't
good
lead
point.
because they're so busy trying to help you be what you're supposed to be. And I
Right.
think that's really caused a lot of damage.
Yeah, that's a good point, taking on the leadership role. So she goes on in these practical tips. She says, give them practical tips of how to be organized. So if you're mentoring someone, talk about organization in their home. Help them anticipate their family needs. Maybe go over, do you have a schedule? Do you have, some things that you need to make your family work? Those are all things that you could go through. So I think that from now on, we should start a new thing where we don't say, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I really just think when someone says, what do? You say, I'm a worker at home. Because isn't that true? Like, stay-at-home mom, it's like, oh, you must sit on the couch and eat bonbons all day. You poor thing, you have nothing to do. And so I think that should be something we should implement. Then I gave you some inserts in the back, and we'll just go through them really quickly. They're in week 6 in your books. Just a few things, like if you are mentoring someone or if you want to use it as your own. There's one, it's called Just Mommy's Home Organizational Plan. And it has weekly tasks, monthly tasks, decluttering. They all have websites that you can go on. They give you schedules for cleaning. They give you daily habits. I think there was a statistic that if you make your bed in the morning, you're going to get more done in that day. It's just a proven fact. I did not make my bed, so I'm probably not going to have a very productive day. But it's just, how many of you made your bed this morning? Wow, P31 woman. You can't function?
My allergist told me I have to.
I have to tell you, I had a girlfriend, my neighbor. She was a very intimidating first neighbor. She was hyperactive, worse than me, which is really hard to be. But she could have her entire house cleaned by 10 a.m. in the morning. Oh my gosh. And I'm talking.
But she woke up at 5.
Yeah.
She was up at 6, but I'm just saying that within 4 hours, she not only had gotten breakfast and everybody out the door, she had literally, I'm talking crazy, I watched this woman do this. She would wash and wax, strip that floor, re-wax it almost every day. She was insane. Every bathroom was completely clean, top to bottom, everything. She even had one room where she used to pull the carpet out, clean underneath, and put it back every week. So I went to her and I said, okay, obviously I'm not gonna be as crazy as you, but you obviously know how to do something better than me, and I wanna know, start with the beginning of your day and tell me how you do this.
A pot of coffee.
She broke that too, which is pretty fun. But for her doing that, it literally showed me where all my gaps were.
Oh,
And I was able to learn from that. So I was able to get done much quicker also, and get
Right.
everything done in a day, which I couldn't
Yeah.
do prior to that.
it's like you can set a timer too. It's amazing what you could do in 10 minutes, So there's things that you could do in 10 minutes that you would think. And I think I used to make sure that my house was clean while we were doing dinner or we'd cycle them. They were all about the same age, so we just cycle them through baths, really quick. But before nightfall, I would make sure my house was clean because the next morning I would do beds and open up blinds and stuff, but I didn't want to have to clean in the morning. So it's just organization again. You had something?
I always like to say I'm Mary, not a Martha. You know, I
Right.
always say that because it's so hard for me to be that kind of woman. Like, you know, she's busy like organizing. I'm organized, but I mean, I don't enjoy that. Like, it's like I like just, okay, if I want to do it that day, I'll do it, and you know, get things done and cook dinner, and I just like to be more free spirited about things. So it's really hard for me to be that way.
Right.
And I learned from other people that weren't. But I think, you know, when you get counseling, because I got counseling once and the pastor's wife was like focusing on the Martha stuff, you know, that cleaning the house and all that. And
Right.
I was just like,
You're like, I'm starting to twitch.
it's not about, you know, it's like not that, you know. It's like I throw a comforter over the bed. I don't even have sheets because I hate sheets.
Hey.
Right? So I mean, it's like,
Looks made.
what do you know, if you have somebody that's, it just goes by, like, if you're counseling somebody, depends on their whole, like, their husband and their whole kind of personality.
Right.
So instead of trying to fit everybody into the same box.
Exactly.
So,
Well, I think you can be in trouble as a Martha because you spend so much time organizing and cleaning that nobody can move in your house. No one's comfortable in your house. They can't eat on anything in the house. I think that's a danger too because you have to have that balance of loving the people. Again, what's the motivation? Is the motivation to have a clean and presentable house, or just that it's organized and clean so that people can live in it? But you have to be able to live in your home. Christine back here. Oh, yeah. Is it green?
Well, I just wanted to speak to that because I'm more of a Mary too, and thankfully I have a husband we're just like really laid back. When he was working, I would make sure everything was picked up before he came home, but I'm not a great housekeeper. I mean, I keep things clean and somewhat organized, but free spirit, loosely, you know, my cabinets, sometimes you don't want to open them, that kind of thing. But what's been important, because we've had a chaotic life in the sense that my husband's been out of town a lot for many years, and I homeschooled 4 kids, sometimes felt totally overwhelmed just keeping all of that going. But using my husband as a filter, finding out what was important to him. We actually just talked about this, strangely enough, this morning, talking about that our house is clean, lived in. You know, we live out in the country, so which is kind of good and kind of bad because people don't drop by. And when I lived in a neighborhood, I tried to keep everything in case somebody knocked at the door, but we're very comfortable. I mean, and there's not piles of stuff, everything, but he's at home all the time and he's comfortable in it. And I kind of use him as my go-to.
That's great.
So, like when he worked, it was really important for him to have dinner on the table at 5:30. And socks and underwear in the drawer. Those were the big things.
Such a great point to really talk to your husband and find out what's important to him. Maybe you're spinning your wheels with organization and cleaning. He could care less. He'd rather have a home cooked meal in a little more chaotic situation, and that's okay. I think the point is that our house isn't chaos, that our house isn't so disgustingly dirty that people are getting sick because, you know what I mean? I think that's the point, that there has to be this balance of loving the people in, taking care of their needs, which is going to your husband, and I've done that. Honey, what's important to you? Honestly, my husband could care less if dinner's ever on the table. He's very self-sufficient. He used to be a fireman. If he wants something, he'd go cook it. He's not high maintenance in that way. But I know other people who that's important to them. For him, clean clothes, that he doesn't have to struggle with what he's wearing. I would ask him, what's important? I noticed, he didn't say this, but I noticed when he came in and the house was clean, when he came in, he just relaxed. I noticed that. So it was like, okay, my husband likes a clean home. He likes an organized home. Those are things that my husband likes. Other people's husbands are going to be completely different. So that's a great point to bring up. And I think that we can't get because you can feel the pressure of the Marthas of the world. I'm a label maker. I love putting labels on everything, like everything. I love it. I would label my bed if I, like, this is where the blanket goes. Like, I just love labels, and I love being organized, I do. But when the kids were little, it's like, shut the cupboard. I also heard that you could just keep one room clean, so if people drop by, like, just don't let them go by in the living room. Like, we'll just stay, come on in. Let me go get the brownies, but don't follow me. But just some tricks like that, but I think in organizing, speed cleaning, I've known people put stuff under their bathroom cabinet, so when they go into the bathroom, they do the mirrors. The next time they go to the bathroom, they do the sinks. There's tricks that we can do to keep things clean that we don't have to go, oh my gosh, no, I have to give up an entire day to clean. We don't have to clean like that. We can clean little bits at a time, or, if you can afford it, get a cleaning lady once a month to do the deep stuff. I mean, there's nothing that says that we have to do it. I don't know. How many of you have cleaning ladies? I love having a cleaning lady personally. I have it once a month, and it's just like the stuff I don't want to do, like baseboards and blinds and yucky. Yes. Training your kids. Yes. In summer, what I would do is,
It's important, you're equipping them.
Yes, you have to train.
yeah, you do have to train them. In summer, I'd give each one of them a room. So like one would have the living room, and then we would switch off, like in the month they would rotate. But so if that room wasn't clean, like I knew exactly who to go to. And they would complain, well, all their stuff is in there. So their job was, all they had to do was gather up their stuff and dump it in that person's bedroom. And then they were in charge of it from there. Like, because you could get into that hassle too. All right, so wrapping up, you can look through those. She gave you a monthly calendar of like deep cleaning. Like if you don't have this stuff, you're not going to remember, oh, I should wash all my rugs today. You know what I mean? You won't remember that stuff.
I think the Fly Lady has an app on her phone now.
Oh, okay.
Does she now?
Yeah, it's an app. I
She's
have it on there.
awesome.
Flylady.net now has an app for your phone, so you get cute little reminders of when you should clean. Proverbs 31:27 says, she looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. And so that is our goal, to look well to the ways of our household. And then she kind of goes into being kind. She finishes off the chapter with being kind. And half of that has to do with just tone of voice. How many times have your husband said something like, what's wrong? You seem angry. And it's like, oh no, I'm just focused on this. Or, sometimes it's like, yeah, I am, but most of the time it's just our tone of voice and being kind and thinking about other people in that way. And anybody in that section have anything that maybe spoke to you or that you thought about, or was something that's like, oh wow, that was just a really... No? You're all kind?
I know what I do because I've had this book before, so I have to rewrite because it's different. It's fun watching, how you change things. But I really enjoyed going through each thing on how we speak. And the most important for me is, yes, I can see something and I need to correct my children or say something to my husband, but I'm learning how I say it is like, that's key. Because
Right.
I can be completely right in what I'm saying.
Right.
But if I'm saying it wrong, they're going to take it as a way of I'm just bringing them down when we're supposed to edify.
Right.
So that was one thing for me that's most important. So I have to learn instead of just blah, just
Right.
immediate reaction, to stop and just like, God, give me your spirit to how to say this. Because
Right.
I already know what to say. It's just the how now. So
Right. And even when things make us angry, I think about how we treat waitresses or how we treat a servant at the store, maybe things that were even rightly justified, we can still be kind in our approach to that person and still use our words to get the same thing across. That, this is a serious situation, or this is without having to go into the angry fit or anything like that. So then she goes into chapter 9 and she talks about submission. And we've hit a little bit on that this morning, but wives are to be subject to their own husbands, and we are to teach the younger woman this truth. And I think, again, with our younger girls in this culture, we don't want to listen to men. We don't want a man telling us what to do. But again, we have to go back to the belief of how did God work out this order? And, Christine hit on this, for her husband, these things are important. That's part of her organizing her home, but it's also part of her being in subjection to her own husband. What do I need to do that's going to make my husband feel at home? What does he want me to do with the kids? How much time does he want me to spend? What are the things he wants me to be involved in at church? What kind of service does he want me to be involved in? What does he want me to do? What limitations does he want me to have? Is the home so important that he'd rather me stay home and do these things versus these things? Is he okay with me serving if the home is okay? Those are just all questions that we need to ask. And I've asked my husband, and he loves me being home, especially like when he's home studying. He loves me being home. But if those things aren't lacking, he also loves me to go out and serve the body. He loves that, and he'll even help me in that because he wants to do that. He wants me to do that, but not, everybody's husband, everybody's married to somebody different. So I want to read this quote that I have down here. It says, "There really is no justifiable way, cultural or otherwise, to get around the fact that the wife is to be submissive to her husband. If a wife is going to be in God's will, she must rightfully, biblically be submissive." That's just a matter of fact. It's God's word. It's what he says in his word. Now we go, okay, to what point? We all know that we're only to be submissive to what can be obedient to God. If our husbands are asking us to do something that is outside of God's commands, we are not told in his word to be submissive to that. I've had women come in for counseling and say, well, my husband is abusive, but, I'm supposed, like almost as an excuse, but I'm supposed to be submissive to him. No, that's not the way that God would want him to treat you, to physically harm you. And so there's different aspects of this submission issue. What do you guys think the biggest area of, what's the hardest part about being submissive? We all raise our hands. We'll go. I think you were first, then you, then Angel. So,
Well, just again, if husband is working a lot of hours and he's tired, or maybe if you have a non-believing husband or somebody who's struggling, sometimes the things that they desire or want don't seem rational from our position, and submitting to that is really hard. And so it's been over the years, again, for us, I've had a husband that's sometimes he'd be away 3 weeks at a time, be home on a weekend and be gone.
right.
And it was a struggle.
It's tough.
But learning to be content in that situation, and I still don't always have it down 100%, but
Right.
learning contentment. I think that's the key, to be able to go before the Lord and seek contentment from the Lord, and just, I'm doing this, I'm going to submit to you as unto the Lord because I'm trying to please Christ. Because sometimes the way they're coming across to us, if I'm just looking at it this way, it's just nothing but frustrating.
Right.
So.
Because in our flesh, or the world's like, well, I didn't get married to be a single mom. Well, I didn't get married to, but in the Lord, I love that you said you prayed about it, because then in the Lord, you're like, okay, well, this is what the Lord has for me. So learning to be content in our situations. Not everybody's going to have the fairy tale. And quite frankly, most of us don't. You know what I mean? It's a non-reality. And different ones of us, we have shortcomings in all different areas. And so I was married to a paramedic firefighter. He was gone 3-4 days in a row per week. That day he came home was a tough day because it was the changing of the guards. We called it Hell Day, because it was like he came in, I'd been running the ship, and now he wants to take over, and he doesn't do things the way I do them. And I had to flip-flop between I'm king of the castle, and now I have to, put him in that authority position. And it was tough. It's a tough road. What are some other reasons?
Well, I think that submission is hard, and the way that I sum it up is that it has to do with power. And when I look back biblically, women have always wanted the power of men, and men want the power of God. And there's always been this struggle, and more so starting out, it's like when I said when I was the feminist soldier, I actually had a higher paying position than my husband did.
Right.
Then we jumped into this biblical marriage,
Right.
and I was supposed to submit.
That was a fun transition.
That was a shock to the system. And I remember the hugest mistake I kept making was I would tell him what I was going to do. And he would say, "Are you telling me, or you've already made up your mind, or are you asking me what I think?" And I'd be like,
No, I'm telling you.
"Yeah, I'm telling you." And I would say that even today, at this point, a lot of years later, I still will fall back into that, why do I need to ask him?
Right.
I've made up my mind already. I know it's right. I'm just going to do it.
Right.
And it's not that I don't do that nearly as much, because that was a huge struggle way back when, but I think that it still lingers there of, why do I need to ask you or consult you? I can make my own decisions. I can feel that the little feminism bug, creeping back in. But I think
Right.
that's why it's hard for women to submit. It's a power struggle.
It is a power struggle.
know?
Well, we want to control, just like you said, Eden, in Genesis, 3, that we want that desire is for our husbands. That word desire was the same word, I think it was when, with the story of Cain and Abel, when, was it Cain that killed Abel? When Cain killed Abel, is that he had a desire, that same word Satan desires. It's not a good desire, because some people say, oh, you're going to desire your husband. It's not that kind of desire. It's, I'm going to desire your power. I want to desire your position. And so it's that kind of desire of controlling our husbands. And we can all attest to the fact that that is absolutely true. Okay, we're going to go here and then here.
Oh.
Go ahead, Liz.
I had
Oh, you go and then you. You
real fast. We had a financial somewhat in that area. We had a timeshare. Like, I did not want it. I had a bad feeling about it, and I was like, babe, I do not want to sign those papers. I have a bad feeling. And he's like, honey, it's just a feeling. You're a woman. You need to. And I was like, oh. And he said, it's all on me. This is going to be all on me. If it's the wrong decision.
Good news. Where do I sign?
And that's what
when can we go on vacation?
That's when I said, okay. So I signed it, and then a few months later, he said, he goes, you were right on this one. But I took the submissive road. Instead of like being, no, I'm not doing this. Okay, babe, it is yours. And that was really hard. And there are times when I'll see it, and we'll discuss it, and then I'll just pray about it. Sometimes,
Right.
God usually changes my heart. But there are times when he comes up and he's like, we're not going to do that. I just been praying about it. And it's like, thank you, Lord, you intervened, because he does have the ultimate say on things. So he'll
Right.
come to me and we'll discuss things, but it's hard when
Right.
you know the answer is no and he's still saying yes. And you're like, okay.
Right. And
All right.
the thing is that there's two sides to that coin, because one, we have to face the consequences of our husbands when they make sinful decisions. But we're going to, the things that God's going to reward us for is the submission. So even when he makes a wrong decision, I'm blessed by God. Obedience comes with the blessings, and disobedience comes with cursings. And God's going to honor the decision I made because I submitted to him. So even when that freed me up, even when I don't agree with him, it's going to be his decision against God, and God's going to deal with him. But also, I am going to have to walk through some of those, because our husbands can make huge financial mistakes, and then we have to walk through the consequences. And I think that's why it's like, I told you, you know what I mean? Like, I warned you. Over the years, my husband's, there's very few times, and I think he's shared this from the stage, where I will just say, you need to listen to me, because there's those moments where I'm like, honey, I just know that I know that I know. I'm going to ask you to listen. And he has learned to go, okay, I'll pay attention, but I don't use those very often. It's like for the big ones, when you're like, please listen to me, when you're begging your husband, like, please listen to my reasoning on this one. But then I got to let it go. and go, but you stand or fall to the Lord. Liz, you
Well,
had it.
that's exactly, can you hear me?
No, is it on?
Is it on? Yeah, it's on. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. That's exactly what I was going to touch on. The hardest thing for me with submission is I know I'm right. I know that I know that I'm right.
Right.
But
There are times we do. I mean, we can all shake our head and go, yes, we've been there.
Yeah, but what I have a problem with is knowing that you're right and he's made a wrong financial decision, and you knew in your heart that it was wrong or wasn't going to turn out very well. 10 years later down the line, I still am a little bitter about it because we are where we are because of that decision. So I think what my point was going to be was we need to touch on that, knowing that God will reward us for saying okay,
Right,
but he's not going to reward me if I'm still bitter about it.
right.
So
Yes.
how do you touch on that?
Yeah, I've been through it, so I can touch on it. Oh,
You're like, you're
hold
not
on.
answering.
I'll hold on and I'll get to you, Kelsey. You can take the mic back to Kelsey. Yeah, I've had that situation because early on in our marriage, and we were believers, Ted was a deacon in our church, and he was smoking behind my back. And I would ask him, are you smoking? No. Smoking? No, because he smoked, and then he gave it up. And so one day, I caught him red-handed. It's like, you can only hide the cigarettes so many places before your wife finds them. And so we got into this big thing, and I was bitter for a few years. I just kept, you guys know, you keep coming back to that sin. You keep coming back to that sin. Every time we got in a fight, it's like I can win because I got something on you now. You know what I mean? We were at a marriage retreat, and there was a very wise man teaching, and he said, someone in here, you won't forgive your husband. You won't let it go. And now it's not his sin, it's yours. And God nailed me because God had forgiven him of his sin. He had asked forgiveness. He had proven that he wasn't walking in that way, but I was in sin because I was so bitter. So it became my sin. And then I had to go before the Lord and go, yeah, I'm in sin here. So it's that thing, not letting their bad decision then turn it into sin on our part, which it can easily do when we get all crazy in our woman head. Kelsey.
I was gonna say, as a young married person, we're almost 7 years, so we're getting to the point of past newly. But I thought I was in submission until we realized I was like, oh, I can submit. It's so easy. And then it's like there would be just one little thing where I'm like, no.
I'll submit until I disagree, and then we're going to do it my way.
And so I know Pastor Ted's taught that before, where it's like you think you're in submission until you actually come to a disagreement, and then that's when it actually gets hard.
Yes. Yeah, and then we got to take a break. Oh, over here. You already have the mic.
Yeah, because I keep forgetting.
I'm sorry.
I'm going through that right now about submission and stuff, and I realized that when your husband is in the wrong and you know he's in the wrong because you're in the Word and you know what the Word says, you don't have to submit to your husband's wrongdoings, right? Like the smoking or any of the sin that goes on. And as a Christian woman, I realized being in the Word showed me that that's not submission when you're submitting to the wrong. So it's but not becoming bitter, like you said, so that we don't, sin. But it's I forgot what I was going to say. It was really good.
Oh,
It was what she was
Lord, help
saying
her.
about her about her thing, but it's like,
Just raise your hand when you figure it out. All right, one last thing, and we're always late taking our breaks. I always say every week I'm gonna stop on time.
I'm sorry. I know I'm supposed to share because my heart started beating. So we've been married this July. It'll be 31 years, and I have been and continue to be a wife in progress. And so the wife that you see now is not the wife I began my marriage
Yeah,
with.
glory, hallelujah, right? My husband's
Glory,
in trouble.
glory, because I was a very strong-willed, very self-absorbed, probably. I knew that I was a very intelligent woman, and I was very confident that I made great decisions and thought them through, and I even prayed. Okay, that was the kind of woman that I was, and there were certain things that I had so much passion about, whether it was our home or our children or whatever, and we weren't in complete agreement. And I thought because I was so intelligent that I was just right, and he just needed to get over it, right? But what I didn't realize was that here I thought I was being so intelligent, but I was revealing how unintelligent I was, because real intelligence is being able to lay it down. Doesn't matter how right you are. It is a power struggle. Really what it boils down to is, am I glorifying you in this, Lord? It's not about me.
Right.
It's
That's
all
wisdom.
about God. It's not even really about your husband. It's what do you want me to do, Lord?
Right.
So sometimes laying down the rights and the wrongs and all of that, I can just now, and yes, we've had huge financial things, and then the intelligent thing is not being able to say, see, but the thing is, okay, you and me, what are we going to do? Let's sit down and pray and ask God where we're going to go next. And that is, I think, the way to go. And I still remain that, still in me is that woman who says, I am a smart cookie, and I'm praying, and I'm in the Word, and I know. You still have to constantly back off and say, I need to be on my knees praying that I will be the wife that God calls me to be. And that is a wife of submission that honors him.
Right. The more quiet I am, I noticed my husband, like, he's a pretty strong leader anyway, so God gave me the right person for my personality. But the quieter I am, the more he'll contemplate things. I can see him, like, if I kind of lay, like, this is the burden. But the other thing that I'll close on that I think is really important is that God has made Ted and your husband the head of the family. Don't you think God's going to give him the direction and the guidance and the wisdom needed? Like, he's going to be giving him. And I can tell you, there's times when I thought I was right and Ted made a decision and I realized, guess what? God was speaking to him. And even though it wasn't what made sense to me, it was exactly what God was speaking to him. And so God does give our husbands that wisdom. If we can back off and be quiet and allow God to deal with him, he's going to turn into more of the spiritual leader that we want. That's what we want. And yet we get in the way constantly of God, being able to develop that man, because we're in the way of the Holy Spirit being able to do that work.